Well, you're welcome back to Morning Express. To set the ball rolling for the second leg of conversations on the program this morning, we're being joined by Mr. Ben Agunloye, who is a public affairs analyst, to discuss in-depthly into some of the topical issues in the news. Hello and a very good morning to you, Mr. Ben.
Good morning.
Wonderful to have you join us here today.
It's my pleasure.
Well, many issues in the news, but one of many such is with discos in the country, where experts say that it might take about 11 whole years and a whopping 1.4 trillion naira in order to bridge the 7.2 million metering gap in the country. Now, I know we have always decried this issue of metering gap, and also with the recent increase in electricity tariffs and all of that, a lot of sharp practices are happening. But what are your thoughts on this particular survey?
11 years, absolutely insensitive and unreasonable.
Too long.
People are paying for darkness.
Yeah.
And I think that some are benefiting from the fact that people are paying for darkness. And so that depicts the unseriousness with which we are describing the metering gap. Are the people ready to pay for meters? The answer is yes. Are there meters being produced worldwide that meets our standard? The answer is also yes. So if there is a willing buyer and there is a willing seller, why is the middleman giving us 11 years?
Discos.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Why is Disco giving us 11 years? It only tells us that Discos are actually not interested in closing the metering gap because they know that people without meter are actually paying for darkness. And so it's good for them, but let them know that by that 11 years, more than half of those people, God helping them, will have migrated away from the national grid to mini grid and to off grid, by which time they may not even have that market that they are capitalizing on anymore.
I mean, the initial, motive behind bringing about these meters was to ensure that, people don't pay for darkness, like you said, and that people pay for electricity as they use it.
Yeah. Without
the meters, they're paying for electricity, whether or not they get power in an entire month or not, they still pay. But with the meters, they buy their units. If they don't use these units, the units remain there.
With them.
It's not like the data tariffs that we have in the country, that we'll still get to that particular issue in a short while. But what do you think of this? And why do you think that these discos have decided, being the middlemen in this entire situation, have decided to keep both the buyer and the seller at arm's length?
Well, because the government, the regulators, allowed them. Because you have a minister who sympathizes with the cause of the disco at the expense of the masses of Nigeria. Is the one who will tell us, so people are wasting light, people are doing this, people. Give them the meter. If they waste it, it reflects on their card.
Yes.
And they pay the bill. So there is nothing like wastage. If I decide to run a gas guzzler, I'm buying the fuel, then I can run it.
Yeah.
And so you are getting the money. You should be able to continue to meet the supply need. You work at that. But telling people they have to power up their freezer and this and that, hey, it doesn't make sense. Because you're leaving the house, you are not even sure. There has been no light for 12 hours. You're leaving the house. And then because you claim you don't want to waste power, then you will switch off your freezer. The light will come for 3 hours while you are away, and by the time you return, it's already off. The only way you know there has been light is that there is possibly cold water in the fridge or freezer.
Yes.
So it means if you have left it off, you won't even know.
And you would have paid for that period.
And you will still be made to pay. So I see most times the minister is making excuses for Disco, is making excuses for Genco, is making excuses for TCN, for the transmission network. But like I said, it's less of their fault. When the people begin to go off grid, and the market is no longer there to sell darkness, I am sure that the discos will eventually come back to their senses.
Now, Mr. Ben, let's digress a little bit. Just before you came into the studio, I was having a conversation with an economist, and one of the things that we were talking about is Nigeria's most recent borrowing spree, which we hear that the World Bank is set to release $500 million into the country. Now, the Director General of LCCI in Lagos had asked the federal government to ensure that some of these borrowed funds are geared towards improving electricity supply in the country and reducing the high cost of energy. Do you share this line of thought? And do you think that if these World Bank loans are fully utilized, 11 years is too long for Nigerians to close up the metering gap and also to have steady power supply?
Well, metering gap, I don't believe we need more than 30 months to do that. So whoever is proposing 11 years should actually be a criminal.
That's a very assertive projection.
Yeah.
Why 30 months?
Because meter is not rocket science. There are factories where these things are produced.
And I must add that there are factories in Nigeria
that can also produce. So whether you are flying them in or you are buying them locally, there are masses waiting to pay for the meter. So in my opinion, we actually don't even need loan to close the metering gap. It's a function of subscription. Ask people to pay.
Because I believe Nigerians would not have to wait for the government to buy meters for them. Now, take us through the process of metering. I know that most homes that you find in urban areas, like, of course, the FCT, have meters in them and all, but in rural communities or in rural areas, you find them operating direct line from the pole and all, and not necessarily having meters. What are the processes of approval for a home to have a meter? Does it have to go through the discos? Does it have to go through the gencos? What exactly is the situation? Because it appears
metering is purely a discos business.
Okay.
And I remember that I read some of those involved in meter who actually felt that, look, of course, in the old days of NEPA, there is generation, there is transmission, there is distribution, and there is marketing. But what we have done during unbundling is to retain transmission as it is, sell discos as
gencos and
bundle, and then sell discos and leave the marketing with the disco in their respective district. I tell you clearly, if there has been a separation between the discos and the marketing, today we won't be talking about what we are talking about,
because the marketing will be for metering.
Will be responsible for metering. So I think the process today is you walk into a disco office, you fill a form which is supposed to be free, but which I know that across AEDC in Abuja, those forms are not even free. You are made to pay something. Perhaps you think, as of today, you see some of them tell you have to pay it. You pay for the, I think, 30,000 to get the form. Then you pay an amount at the point of submission, and then approval. So between 135 and 183,000 naira, you possibly are done with paying for a meter. But the question will be, how long does it take for this to get approved? Now, a lot of inefficiency exists with the discos, which nobody, I think at the moment, nobody is getting sanctioned for anything. You just go. You see new areas, houses are coming up, people have to buy their own transformers, and you still want to give them estimated billing. A lot, it's wrong. And I think those rights have to be more clearly defined. It is not sufficient for the minister to say on TV, if don't buy transformers, yes, we know it is disco's duty, but when the transformer goes down, or whose duty is it to new area, what is the time? Not whose duty, we all know it is disco's duty, but what is the timeline between when it goes down and when it must be fixed? And if it is not fixed within that time, what sanction is there for the disco that covers the area?
Because we've seen a lot of Nigerians crying out that the transformer in their neighborhood has blown up, and then sometimes it takes months for actions to be taken by the discos, and it takes a lot of visits to the office of the discos, a lot of letters, and in some cases, for people who know their rights, even court cases.
So there should be a defined sanction.
Yeah.
There's what we call minimum performance level. There's what we call service failure. So in the event of a service failure, the meter is down, the line has dropped. I know houses, I can show you picture. There is a house in Kubwa, not too far from the NNPC junction, where the pole had been resting on the fence for 4 years.
4 entire.
And discos go in that area to do monitoring, to collect. Whose responsibility is it to raise that pole back? Is it the residents of the house or disco or the community? Now when that, tomorrow if that pole eventually falls the fence and people die, then you blame the people in the area. But there are discos officials who patrol those areas. NRC and the rest who should have oversight function should also see such things. And for that, I believe that even Health and Safety Society should have been holding the disco accountable for some of the inefficiencies and carelessness that you see all over the place.
Well, Mr. Ben, still talking about power sector in the country, let's talk about the banding of different neighborhoods. This has always been a very big issue, and in recent times we've seen many Nigerians, especially vulnerable Nigerians, decrying the fact that they were forcefully moved from band B, from band C or band B, all the way to band A, which is way more expensive than any other band. In the first instance, what is your opinion about this banding idea? Secondly, what is your opinion about moving people into bands without their opinion and their say?
Now, basically, if you ask me, the idea of banding is possibly the idea of class. But if you ask me, do we actually have class in Nigeria? We're only deceiving ourselves. You've got the have and the have-nots. Now, if you say, okay, it's class, I know that this is Primark and this is Harrod. If I walk into Harrod, I know I must pay the price for Harrod. If I walk into Primark, I know I am buying Primark. If I go into Poundland or Farm Fresh, I know what I have subscribed for. And
now these are references you are making in the UK or
that's class. But not in a case where people do not have good road, they do not have any form of life, and then you are not even giving, you say by band, okay, if we give you 20 hours minimum per day over the month or over whatever period, you pay band, you are in band A. 16 hours put you in band B, 12 hours put you in band C, and maybe 8 hours and below puts you in band D. Now, how come people who do not get 12 hours on the average suddenly go migrated to band A? Or you just give them power straight for 20 hours at a stretch for the first time, and the next day they buy card
and they are in band A.
They are in band A. And then subsequently the light is not there constantly for more than 12 hours every day. And have already migrated them. They have bought the card at band A, but they are now using it at the rate of power for band C or D. And the question therefore will be, who is responsible? Because if you actually want to do that kind of measurement and statistics, then there should be policies, there should be procedure in place to ensure that there is flexibility.
Let's talk about the processes. Let's talk about transparency and accountability. A lot of Nigerians do not even know what bands they are in. That is in the first instance. They just know that electricity units that used to cost them 5,000 naira for a month now cost them
23,000.
Exactly. So how do we ensure that this information is passed across appropriately for people to know that this is the band that they are in, without just necessarily hearing it from their neighbor saying, oh neighbor, we are now on band A or band B?
Basically, you still come back to the regulators. There should be a minimum notice period. There should be proper announcement. Not that you put something on your notice board in the office
and expect everybody to know.
And some privileged people snap it and share it on WhatsApp. I don't think that should be the situation. But again, do we have consumer protection as it should be?
CPP.
The answer is no. The CPP should also go around the estate, go around the neighborhood, gather evidence, and let's bring the discourse to their responsibility.
Still talking about the CPP, Mr. Ben, do you think that perhaps the CPP is just a little bit overburdened and overwhelmed with the issues of consumer protection in the country, unlike institutions like the EFCC, that their efforts are being complemented by institutions like ICPC and the rest? But on the part of CPP, it's just CPP and nothing else.
Well, I think that they are not overburdened. I only think that they need to structure, right?
Yeah.
If there are a lot of good people in the land who needed job and who could be employed. So if they need to expand their base,
Their operations.
For me, I think they are too thin on the ground. The number of booths they have on the floor is too few.
Yeah.
So you need to look at, okay, these are the guys looking at electricity, these are the ones looking at the open market, these are the ones looking at the manufacturing, and then you can always come up with your data and you know what to do.
Yeah.
So I think that yes, they are working, but if you do not plan your work, then you are planning. That's if you do not organize your work, you are waiting for your work to disorganize you. And so I don't think they are overburdened, but I think that the structure they have on ground is possibly too lean for the responsibility that they have for the nation. So they should come up with their expansion process. Yeah. They should come up with their demands. If they are going to get some health and safety organization to partner with, so that at least issues of some of the monitoring are not directly done by them, they are done in partners. There are agencies all over. There are 1,001 NGOs in Nigeria. And the reality is that the government agencies and these NGOs who are in the grassroots, who are in those homes and in this environment, could partner together, and then we have at every point a robust case. So you are saying, look, Disco, you are not doing this. This community has been without light, without electricity supply for 6 months, and you have your evidence. People have visited the neighborhood, and the facts are there. And so it becomes difficult for Discos to deny this. Yeah. And you can place that on the table and demand sanction. But where you don't even have men, and you are waiting in your office for people to come and write petition, some people don't even know there is a CCP. So how do you then write petition to an organization you are not well informed about their modus operandi?
Well, interesting conversations here on the program this morning. Let's move on to Kogi State, where the suspended Senator Natasha has flouted rules set by the state government on the ban of public gatherings and rallies, and also convoys within the state capital, and has made a surprise appearance in our hometown in a chopper amidst welcome by her supporters. Well, this is quite an interesting conversation, Mr. Ben, and I don't know where we are going to tilt with this, but we saw Governor Dodo issuing a directive against, public gatherings and rallies and all of that. But yesterday, we saw Natasha flouting these rules set by the state government. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think rules are meant to be guidelines. Yeah. First, you have said no convoy. She ran with a convoy? For me, it's no. Yeah. She came in by aircraft. That's number one. Number two is, you have said, look, let there be no crowd gathering to avoid security or insecurity, to avoid challenges. Yes. What is that also saying is that if you now decide to organize, if anything go wrong, you cannot blame the government and you will be held responsible. So for me, it was okay that the police or anybody was not there to disturb them. However, if anything had gone wrong, nobody would also be holding the government responsible. So I think as a responsible government, as a responsible governor, it doesn't really matter what anybody has to say. You say, oh, there is contention on ground, and we think that public gathering should not be encouraged. But if some individual think, oh, we have our situation under control, and we can guarantee our own safety. And they go ahead. Hey, you won't really blame them. And I think it was good that the government didn't make any effort, in my opinion, to fight. But if anything has gone wrong, we don't know yet. But whatever was the resulting from the gathering, you cannot blame the government.
Now let's talk about her personality. Talking about the senator now, she has had her own fair share of battles with the former governor of Kogi State, talking about Yahya Bello, and of course his protege and successor, Governor Dodo at the moment. And with the troubles she has had within the Nigerian Senate, her suspension, and all of the events that have unfolded, this is the first time she is going home to see her people. And we also saw that controversial signing of a recall petition to INEC by certain individuals who claim to be her constituents, which INEC has faulted, being that there were some irregularities in the mode of issuing that petition. What do you make of this entire situation? And a lot of people might describe it as extremely messy. Do you share the same thoughts?
Well, number one, he was elected to the Senate by the constituent.
Exactly.
My opinion, when there were issues and the Senate was gathering to suspend or not suspend, the first point of call for me would have been that he should touch base with our constituents. So going therefore to meet them yesterday is something for me that was long overdue.
Interesting.
But first, you internationalized the issues, you did a lot, and then of course, in the process of trying to defend, I think that there was some outright falsehood, which some of those who claim they are trying to recall her were holding on to. Now, this is where it goes. We also saw videos of people queuing up for whatever reason to sign for her recall. Now, the question you want to ask is, where were our own supporters when those queues and those videos and those things goes around? So it's not sufficient to come out and tell us, oh, they are fictitious. What they did was to go to court and say INEC should not collect the petition because the signatories are fictitious. But we saw people on the queue. We saw someone who said then they told us to come and collect palliative, that's why we are here. But what they are doing is different, so I did not participate. But those who are participating knew what they were doing.
And they were her constituents.
And they were our constituents. Now, INEC said, oh, this thing was not duly filed. And they pointed out the errors. Those who needed to make the correction returned and make the amendment. So today, officially, INEC had received the petition and had notified her and had notified the Senate to say, look, there is a petition to this direction. So to a large extent, therefore, I really don't believe in the news and issues of fictitious or non-fictitious. There is a clearly defined process for recall, and which I think looks very difficult and looks humongous. It is more difficult to recall than to elect. In the last election, just about 20% of the entire constituency voted. But for recall, you require more than 50%, at least 50%. So if you ask me, if 20% voted and you need 50% for recall, is somehow not balanced. You check some other countries, it's just 10%. I think in the UK for recall. And you don't do any other thing, no verification. Once you can get 10% of the registered voters in your constituency to sign the petition, you are gone.
And most petitions are even signed online, and not necessarily the pen and paper sort of petition that we see that can actually be doctored or tampered with.
But in our own case, you're looking for 50% of the constituents. You then spend money to go and verify before you now come back for a referendum vote.
Mr. Ben, with the issue of recall hovering over the senator's head, and the reception we saw yesterday in our hometown.
Yeah.
Do you think the recall is imminent?
Well, this is where my worry is. Ask those who are involved.
Yeah.
There are processes for gathering crowd in Nigeria, and the crowds are not necessarily organic.
Yeah.
We've seen campaign in some state governorship election where 100,000 people are gathered for a candidate who did not get 5,000 votes. So the question will be, the crowd we saw, are they 100% from the constituency?
Yeah.
Do they have their PVC when the matter comes to be that okay,
Go to the polls and do what you have to do.
How many of the people in that crowd are more than the 54,000 that voted for her?
Yeah.
So are we sure they have the PVCs? Are we sure that some of them are not there for? Okay, we saw the
stomach infrastructure.
There were people who were there with her who were possibly have no business being in the panel.
Yeah.
But who came, whether in solidarity, in the name of women defense, in whatever guise, or some out of maybe we hate the government of the day, and so we must, anybody that is against the enemy of my enemy is a friend.
It's a friend, yeah.
So it could be that. So they may not even be residents of the state. Some of them may not be. Some of them, like I said, may be resident and do not even have voters card.
I mean, like the likes of the former education minister who had gone to represent her at the panel, you know, at the Senate, talking about Obieze Kwesili, that also had the clash with another senator. Senator Nwifuru, the deputy chief whip of the Nigerian Senate.
Yeah.
Well, interesting times. Governor Dodo had, following her appearance in our hometown, you know, via means that might have been a way to boycott the rules, all the orders, executive orders given by the governor. Now, he had cited that security operatives, especially the DSS, will be the ones to determine whether or not she has actually flouted these rules and whether or not she should be made to pay for some of her actions following her return home yesterday. Are the words of but these words, rather, I might add, have been sort of criticized by certain individuals, citing that the governor seems to be fighting head-on with the senator during her most troubling times.
Well, the senator represents the governor in the first place.
Yeah.
They are from the same constituency. Now, a law has been made.
Yeah.
Some action that followed. There is a purpose for the law. There are agencies who hold responsibility for intelligence gathering for all the others. So for the governor saying they will be the one to advise on what next.
Yes.
In my opinion, it's in order. Laws are meant to be laws. And I would always say there is a difference between radicalism and rascality. They may look alike, they both want change, they both press for change. But one would always press for it following procedures and rules.
Yes.
The other will press for it in a disorderly manner. And if you are caught for misbehaving, it is not because you are demanding for change, you should be punished for misbehaving. That has always been my opinion. We say there is riot, a student slap the vice chancellor, you should be punished for slapping the vice chancellor.
Not for rioting.
Not for rioting.
Interesting.
So you might say they are no. The act of slapping somebody who is old enough to be your father
and who is an authority in the university.
It's an unruly behavior. Yeah, it's basis and points for your riot. So sit down and negotiate on that. Disagree, agree, do whatever. But to physically assault somebody, for me, as a student leader back then, you should be held liable for that rascally and unruly behaviors. So if that can be if that is proven, if that is defined, it doesn't matter what anybody feels or has to say. Rules are rules. Environments are meant to be governed by rules and processes.
Yeah.
If you think you can break down the rule at all time, we get to a point where nobody is safe. That's the practical reality.
Well, talking about rules and breaking rules, we hear that the Ebonyi State Governor, Governor Francis Nwifuru, has arrested 6 commissioners in the state, as well as the local government chairman of Ohozora, local government chairman, over the alleged, or local government area, over the alleged breach of contract terms. Now, what are these contract terms? In the course of this conversation, you will get to find out more. Quite a very disturbing story coming in from Ebonyi State. 6 commissioners being arrested by the governor, and even a local government council chairman.
Yeah. It's for me.
Yeah.
It's a pointer to the right direction. Like we keep saying,
Yes.
people should be held accountable for their wrongdoing.
Yeah.
There should be consequences for every act of misbehavior once proven. And like I would insist, it shouldn't stop with the 6 commissioners and the local government chairman. The lawyers who signed the agreement, those who were responsible for monitoring the process that did not report, those who raised the wrong vouchers, they should also be held accountable. And they should be recommended to relevant professional bodies for professional misconduct sanctions. When that happens, I keep saying, their colleagues across their profession will begin to know that before the privilege of that office, the responsibility of the office comes.
Now you might also note that the governor had arrested the 6 commissioners over alleged involvement in breach of contract for the construction of 140 housing units for Izo and Amazi communities. I think we took the report yesterday, but before we wrap up the conversation, we might see if we can, have that detailed report. But 140 units, it said that the governor was just not pleased with the pace at which the work was being done.
Yes, of course, it's because when you look at, okay, we have agreed this job should be done, and that's where we talk about oversight function, that's where we talk about supervision. At the inception of every project, there is a timeline, there are deliverables that are quantifiable. So you are saying, okay, you want to build houses at this point, maybe 3 months down the line, you should have cleared the ground. At this point, the foundations should have been in place. At this point, you should be at lintel level. At this point, you should be at finishing. And there are people who are responsible for monitoring this. And of course, there are reports that should be generated at each of those points to say, okay, this is an inception report, and this is what percentage of the money goes with it. This is an interim report. This is what percentage goes on it. This is a progressive report. This is percentage of payment that should be done. Now, this is final report. This is what percentage of the money that should be paid. This is commission, acceptance and commissioning. This is what should be paid. Now, where those who have oversight function realizes that the job is not being done within the scope, what should have been done in 90 days has not been done, and you're already 180 days into the project. And then you notice maybe 90 days you should have paid only 20%. By 180 days you have not done the 20% of the work, but you have paid over 50% of the money. So for me, in both cases, there should always be consequence for such actions.
But do you think that the governor might have been a little bit overboard and a little bit too harsh to have arrested the commissioners rather than the contractors who were saddled with the responsibility of actually erecting this housing units, and not going after the supervisors or people saddled with the responsibility of oversight?
Well, for me, the governor hadn't done anything wrong.
Why?
The commissioners were the people he hired, right? The contractors were engaged to be supervised by the commissioners he hired.
Yes.
So if there is a failure, if you notice a failure, it is the commissioner who should go, who should be sanctioned for it. He can now prove, right?
Yes.
Now, whether he's even able to prove the complicity of the contractors or not, he should still go for the process. What matters is that when next a new commissioner gets on the scene, or if he is able to get his or her job back, he will know that next time you don't allow contractors to mess you up.
Yeah.
For me, contractors are not necessarily stakeholders in the state. They are just there to make their money. But for whoever becomes a commissioner appointed by an elected governor, he in a way represents, is appointed, but he represents the community.
Yes.
So it's a major stakeholder in the state. In a lot of states, it's been one of the commissioners becoming the governor, succeeding, becomes the successor of the governor.
Yes.
So if while the governor was still on seat, they cannot make sure that his project see the light of the day, it means that if one of them eventually succeeding, everything can become completely abandoned.
Now, Mr. Ben, that also takes us to the issue of how these government projects or contracts are being awarded. The governor, having been doing quite a lot for his people in Ebonyi State, has been commended by certain individuals. However, individuals online have also criticized the governor of mortgaging the state's wealth and, key juicy positions in the state for his friends and family. I'll read out a document and I would want you to react quickly to this. In Ebonyi State, it is said that the governor is saddling his brothers, stepbrothers, in-laws, political associates, and appointees. Innocent Nwifuru is in charge of IGR at Garkis. Simeon Nwifuru is in charge of Tricycle IGR. Chikwado Nwifuru is in charge of Waste Management and Fire Service. Emmanuel Nwifuru is in charge of Haulage. Chijokwe Nwifuru is in charge of Shops in the capital city. Paulinus Nwifuru is in charge of Property Rates. Chibweze Nwifuru is in charge of Building Material Market IGR. And Ohamadike Nwifuru is in charge of Minings. The list goes on and on and on and on. We know that the governor's father has many wives and more than 100 children. Is this statement true, that the governor is mortgaging the state to friends and family?
Well, we need to look at it from this perspective. There are elective positions, there are mandatory positions defined by the law.
Yeah.
So rather than, in this case, in a state as small as Ebonyi, rather than maybe pick on who is appointed, tell us what those appointees are doing wrong.
But is it right for a governor to have appointed more than 10 people from his own family into key positions, especially IGR positions in the state?
What I'm still saying is this. Before we start questioning
the governor,
who is appointed,
we
need to look at the jobs they are meant to do. Are they doing their jobs or not? If we can prove that the jobs are not being done, whether they are cronies of the governor or not, then we should be talking about taking them out of office. But having them, yes, we might say, oh, there is no spread. But perhaps it is the commissioners that the law says he must spread.
Yes.
He could see some of those jobs as things he should do by himself. And then you say, okay, these are the hands I can trust to do them. So rather than people brandishing, if they were maybe children of her sisters and the rest, then that means they answer different surnames.
Yeah.
Maybe the link will not be this direct. But what we are saying, what I would be looking at more is this. Are they doing their jobs? If they are not doing it, then let us question them for failures to deliver on their responsibilities, as against the question of who they are.
Now, this certain individuals saddled with the responsibility of IGR collection, who have the governor's surname, are all his siblings. The commissioners are not necessarily his siblings, but we cannot rule out the possibility of them being his cronies.
Yeah.
Do you still think that the governor is not being a bit complicit, somewhat, in how the certain contracts in the state are being handled by contractors who sort of feel like they can do anything because they are close to the governor. And that is why we are seeing this sort of mess that is currently happening.
Well, I will disagree to an extent. Here, all the positions listed as related to him were revenue generating.
Yeah.
Bring the money in. Spending the money, it's more on the part of the commissioners. And, of course, the contractors are the receiving end.
Yeah.
So if there were contractors who were not competent or qualified for the job, who were given, let's come up with facts and figure to say that this contractor is known for doing borehole. You have given him road construction.
Yes.
This contractor is known for furniture. You have given him estate construction. And so based on that, he has not been able to deliver.
Yeah.
I think those should be the basis. Let's separate people from issues. Let's separate the facts from the truth. Yes, they have the same common surname, that's a fact. But the truth will be, are they doing their job? Are they not doing their job? Have the commissioners demanded? We've seen the Minister of Works, Abuja Kaduna Road, has decided we are going to revoke the contract.
The contract.
Because the contractor is not performing. Has any of the commissioners threatened to revoke the said contracts?
Well, not any that we know.
Fine. So if they have, rather than all these side talk, bring the evidence to say that, okay, these are the video evidence that the commissioners actually did their job. It is the contractors that failed on their part. But if you cannot show, we see the Minister of Works everywhere threatening, we will revoke this, we will revoke that, and things like that. That
should have been the job of the commission.
That should have been the job of the commissioners. And the evidence should be there if they have done it. If they have written memos that the governors or the contractors have ignored, that is what we should be saying on the press. Not talking about complicity or their hands are tied. I know a commissioner of finance in one of the states in the northeast, during the Jonathan regime, who resigned the appointment because the governor wanted to spend then what we call the environmental, there is a name for it.
Some sort of sharp practice.
Yeah. So he said, look, governor signed off on this. And the governor said, no, you can't dictate to me what to do. He said, well, I'm here as a commissioner of finance because I am a chartered accountant. This thing we are trying to do will impact negatively on my competency,
and he had to resign.
He resigned. Well, left the state and returned to practice in Abuja.
Mr. Ben, I think this is the perfect place to leave the conversation. I wish we had more time, but thank you so much. This has been very engaging. We hope to have you here again in the studio next time.
Thank you very much.
Well, this is as much as time will permit for us to take on Morning Express this morning with Mr. Ben Agunloye. After the break, we'll be having Samuel Adeleke here in the studio to talk ADBN sports with us. Do well to stay with us. We'll be back in a jiffy.